Hello, my name is Henry Keane. This is News Pulse at UATV. Welcome to the daily segment. Today in the episode, more Wildberries burn and seems like more will be. General Staff of the Ukrainian Army confirms as much as million objects overall in Russia and on the front line targeted during this year alone. New Commander-in-Chief Mykhailo Drapatyi announced by President Zelensky, who is Drapatyi, why it is him, and why such an appointment comes as a great deal of disappointment for Russians. Russia's economy is sinking. Putin sells tons of gold reserves to save the own budget. Large Wildberries logistics center in Russian Krasnodar and Stavropol Krais this time caught fire after drone attack. Witnesses also report between 20 and 30 loud explosions, and the scale of the attack is truly incredible, and so is the result. Wildberries is Russia's largest online civilian retailer, yes, but there is a nuance to it that changes the color grading of the backdrop to that smoky hue, as you can see. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky explained the attacks. He said these facilities, direct quote, were used by the aggressor state to ensure the supply of sanctioned components for drone productions and navigation equipment, end of quote. Indeed, Wildberries offers a wide range of dual-use goods, from civilian UAVs suitable for military conversion, just by the way, to equipment such as body armor, helmets and radios. Russians were hoping while driving through Moscow on their German cars to watch Ukrainian burning as a show on their American iPhones, leaving a cheering comment in also American Facebook. However, obviously, things went way south since then. The Ukrainian F-16 fighter jet destroyed a Russian aircraft in aerial combat for the first time during this war. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, confirmed this during a U.S. Senate hearing. He attributed the success to the strengthening of Ukraine's multi-layered air defense systems supported by its allies. Responding to questions from senators, Kane also stated that he wants to see Ukraine emerge victorious in this war.
I want to highlight that the incredible work that the Ukraine industrial base is doing as they scale their own capabilities. It ranges from their surface-to-air capabilities to their air-to-air capabilities. I'll note that recently we had the first air-to-air kill where a Ukrainian F-16 shot down a Russian fighter. So I think their ability to scale their layered defense has come along a long way over the past couple years with the help and assistance of many.
Since the beginning of 2026, Unmanned Systems Forces of Ukraine have engaged over 1 million confirmed Russian military targets, according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Drones currently account for approximately 90% of all enemy engagements. Since the beginning of the year, approximately 193,500 Russian troops have been killed or seriously wounded, with UAV operators achieving their peak performance in June, engaging over 200,000 targets. On the backdrop of a mass nationwide protests, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, has decided to replace the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Ex-Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrskyi is leaving, and Ukraine says thank you to the man who stood at the gates of Kyiv and commanded its defense, then followed by Russian army retreat, the man who stabilized the front line, indeed the man of many achievements and dignities that will not be forgotten for sure. Not his extensive military experience will be taken for granted or neglected. Acting General of Ukrainian Army Oleksandr Syrskyi will be investing his experience in our collective victory, while new times are coming demanding a swift change in pace of adaptation a newcomer has to offer. Meet the new Commander-in-Chief of Ukrainian Armed Forces.
I have decided that Mykhailo Drapatyi will become the new Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Together with Mykhailo, Yevgeny Hamara, and Pavlo Polisa, we determined how the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine should be reconfigured. It is a fact that Oleksandr Syrskyi delivered results for Ukraine in the defense of Kyiv, the Kharkiv offensive, and the Kursk operation. We have come a long way. Ukraine's defense continues, and every warrior must be treated with dignity. I am grateful to Oleksandr Syrskyi and to every one of our warriors for Ukraine's strong positions on the front. I am grateful to Mykhailo Drapatyi for sharing this vision.
Mykhailo Drapatyi, 42 years old, Ukrainian major general, a man who literally grew up from within the Ukrainian armed forces, a man who broke through the Kremlin separation forces barricades, as you can see, a man who walked his talk all the way through from the very lows to the top heights of the army due to his morale, character and power, a man who enjoys utter respect from his own army, a respect he fully deserved. Ex-Minister of Defense Mykhailo Fedorov has already congratulated General Drapatyi, calling his appointment, I quote, new air and new hope in the struggle of free people for freedom and justice. Also noted that it is a voice of change that could not be ignored.
We have a difficult job ahead, so we will work without making big promises, with responsibility for our decisions and respect for the people who are holding the front and helping Ukraine to survive. The President of Ukraine has set us clear tasks to continue and intensify offensive actions in all domains, plan new operations in enemy's rear, develop the army and its technologies, and increase the capabilities of the armed forces of Ukraine. Mykhailo Drapatyi, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, on Facebook.
And not only the respect Drapatyi has deserved, he also deserved fear. The way the army of Russian military bloggers already reacts to his appointment is both encouraging and hilarious for us here in Ukraine, but unable to do anything about the fact they say that, we quote, the new commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Mykhailo Drapatyi, is a criminal at large and is wanted in Russia, according to the data of the Ministry of Internal Affairs database. This the end of quote. And the end of Russian hopes, as I can see, because obviously Russians are afraid, and for a good reason. We'll keep you posted. The super popular in the United States MAGA blogger and once a staunch defier of almost everything Ukrainian, including that of Ukrainian natural rights to self-determination and sovereignty, suddenly changed her tone sharply and declared that she was befuddled by Russian propaganda. Moreover, Miss Laura Loomer then took a plane and came to Ukraine in person.
There's nothing like enjoying a meal with the backdrop of a Russian ballistic missile attack and blown out windows at McDonald's to really make you appreciate being an American and evaluate your prior perspective on US support for Ukraine. What's happening in Ukraine today can and will happen in America in the near future if we do not stop communism and multipolarity. Laura Loomer, MAGA blogger on X.
Gold reserve sell-off. Returning to cash and fear of default, the Russian economy is entering a new and probably the terminal phase of a crisis. In an attempt to plug a giant hole in the budget, the Central Bank of the Russian Federation has resorted to extremes, indeed, selling off a record 43 tons of gold. At the same time, Russian citizens are massively withdrawing funds from their own banks and buying, yes, foreign currency, euros and dollars en masse. The problems have gone far beyond the fuel crisis. Now more in our next story for you.
Russia's central bank gold reserves have fallen to their lowest level on record, according to a report by the World Gold Council. In June alone, reserves shrank by more than 9 tons, bringing total sales since the beginning of the year to 43.5 tons. The Moscow Times reports, citing data from the regulator. Russia has sold gold on a comparable scale only once before, in 2002, when reserves declined by 36 tons over 6 months. Analysts say selling precious metals is a measure of last resort, but under current conditions, the Kremlin has few alternatives.
When oil and gas revenues fall below the level set by the fiscal rule, or when national wealth fund resources are directed toward domestic investment, the Bank of Russia carries out offsetting operations using liquid reserve assets. In this mechanism, the central bank performs a technical function, rather than making an independent decision to cover the budget deficit by selling gold. Vladimir Chernov, analyst at Freedom Global, in a comment to Reuters.
According to Russia's finance ministry, the country's consolidated budget deficit reached 5.7 trillion rubles by the end of June, equivalent to 2.5% of GDP. However, the federal budget for the whole of 2026 projected a deficit of just 3.79 trillion rubles, or 1.6% of GDP. Analysts argue that even a hypothetical increase in oil revenues would no longer be enough to fill the gap. Moscow is now forced to import petroleum products, while even its long-standing trading partners are reluctant to sell them at discounted prices.
India, which Russia had pinned so many hopes on and presented to its own citizens as a reliable partner, unexpectedly doubled export duties on fuel, particularly diesel and aviation kerosene, which Russia needs most right now. In other words, India has raised prices even for Russia. The situation on global markets is therefore extremely unfavorable for them, and I don't think even a war in Iran will be enough to save them.
In January 2026, the Russian government raised value-added tax from 20 to 22%. Since then, pharmacies, restaurants, beauty salons, and small retailers have increasingly encouraged customers to pay in cash, allowing more of their income to remain off the books and reducing their VAT burden. The trend has been reinforced by disruptions to electronic payment systems caused by internet outages and restrictions. Russians are withdrawing cash from banks, but are increasingly reluctant to deposit it back into the financial system, analysts note.
All of these developments reflect growing public distrust of the banking system, regardless of whether the banks are close to the Kremlin or not. This lack of confidence is becoming one of the key drivers of the banking crisis. It is not only about Russia being cut off from SWIFT or disruptions in business payments, it is also about the steady outflow of household deposits, which could significantly accelerate a banking crisis that may not be far away.
According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, the number of foreign currency exchange requests in Russia increased 12-fold in May compared with January. At the beginning of the year, nearly 59% of transactions involved amounts exceeding 1 million rubles. Now, more than 90% involve sums below 100,000 rubles, suggesting that demand for foreign currency has spread beyond wealthy Russians to ordinary households.
People are asking a perfectly logical question. If the exchange rate is being maintained today only through the central bank's interventions, what will happen when those resources are no longer sufficient? Many fear that the ruble could weaken very rapidly. If today $1 costs around 70 rubles, in a few months it could reach 120 or even 150.
According to the Institute for the Study of War, the Russian economy is entering a new phase of crisis. Analysts point to the sharp decline in the Moscow Exchange Index and the deterioration of the central bank's business climate indicator as some of the clearest warning signs. They argue that Russia's economic problems now extend far beyond the fuel shortages triggered by Ukrainian strikes on the country's oil refineries. Reported by Andriy Dmitrenko, UATV News.
Well, that seems that it is it for today. I am Henry Keane. We are UATV. We thank you for watching this segment. We appreciate your time and effort indeed. Please also share, comment, maybe even subscribe to UATV, because we got you covered on whatever tomorrow holds for all of us, but always and as usual in Ukrainian perspective. Stay safe and see you tomorrow.